1926.961, Deenergizing lines and equipment for employee protection, Subpart V. 1926.961a, Application. This section applies to the deenergizing of transmission and distribution lines and equipment for the purpose of protecting employees. Conductors and parts of electric equipment that have been deenergized under procedures other than those required by this section shall be treated as energized. 1926.961b, General. 1926.961b, 1, System Operator. If a system operator is in charge of the lines or equipment and their means of disconnection, the employer shall designate one employee in the crew to be in charge of the clearance and shall comply with all of the requirements of paragraph C of this section in the order specified. 1926.961b, 2, No System Operator. If no system operator is in charge of the lines or equipment and their means of disconnection, the employer shall designate one employee in the crew to be in charge of the clearance and to perform the functions that the system operator would otherwise perform under this section. All of the requirements of paragraph C of this section apply in the order specified, except as provided in paragraph B, 3 of this section. 1926.961b, 3, Single crews working with the means of disconnection under the control of the employee in charge of the clearance. If only one crew will be working on the lines or equipment and if the means of disconnection is accessible and visible to, and under the sole control of, the employee in charge of the clearance, paragraphs C1, C3, and C5 of this section do not apply. Additionally, the employer does not need to use the tags required by the remaining provisions of paragraph C of this section. 1926.961b, 4, Multiple crews. If two or more crews will be working on the same lines or equipment, then 1926.961b, 4, through 1926.961b, 4, 2, the crews shall coordinate their activities under this section with a single employee in charge of the clearance for all of the crews and follow the requirements of this section as if all of the employees formed a single crew, or each crew shall independently comply with this section and, if there is no system operator in charge of the lines or equipment, shall have separate tags and coordinate deenergizing and re-energizing the lines and equipment with the other crews. 1926.961b, 5, Disconnecting means accessible to general public. The employer shall render any disconnecting means that are accessible to individuals outside the employer's control, for example, the general public, inoperable while the disconnecting means are open for the purpose of protecting employees. 1926.961c, Deenergizing lines and equipment. 1926.961c1, Request to deenergize. The employee that the employer designates pursuant to paragraph B of this section as being in charge of the clearance shall make a request of the system operator to deenergize the particular section of line or equipment. The designated employee becomes the employee in charge, as this term is used in paragraph C of this section, and is responsible for the clearance. 1926.961c2, Open disconnecting means. The employer shall ensure that all switches, disconnectors, jumpers, taps, and other means through which known sources of electric energy may be supplied to the particular lines and equipment to be deenergized are open. The employer shall render such means inoperable, unless its design does not so permit, and then ensure that such means are tagged to indicate that employees are at work. 1926.961c3, Automatically and remotely controlled switches. The employer shall ensure that automatically and remotely controlled switches that could cause the open disconnecting means to close are also tagged at the points of control. The employer shall render the automatic or remote control feature inoperable, unless its design does not so permit. 1926.961c4, Network protectors. The employer need not use the tags mentioned in paragraphs C2 and C3 of this section on a network protector for work on the primary feeder for the network protector's associated network transformer when the employer can demonstrate all of the following conditions. 1926.961c4 through 1926.961c4, 3, every network protector is maintained so that it will immediately trip open if closed when a primary conductor is deenergized. Employees cannot manually place any network protector in a closed position without the use of tools, and any manual override position is blocked, locked, or otherwise disabled. And the employer has procedures for manually overriding any network protector that incorporate provisions for determining, before anyone places a network protector in a closed position, that the line connected to the network protector is not de-energized for the protection of any employee working on the line. And, if the line connected to the network protector is not de-energized for the protection of any employee working on the line, the primary conductors for the network protector are energized. 1926.961 C5 Tags. Tags shall prohibit operation of the disconnecting means and shall indicate that employees are at work. 1926.961 C6 Test for energized condition. After the applicable requirements in paragraphs C1 through C5 of this section have been followed and the system operator gives a clearance to the employee in charge, the employer shall ensure that the lines and equipment are de-energized by testing the lines and equipment to be worked with a device designed to detect voltage. 1926.961 C7 Install grounds. The employer shall ensure the installation of protective grounds as required by section 1926.962. 1926.961 C8 Consider lines and equipment de-energized. After the applicable requirements of paragraphs C1 through C7 of this section have been followed, the lines and equipment involved may be considered de-energized. 1926.961 C9 Transferring clearances. To transfer the clearance, the employee in charge, or the employee's supervisor, if the employee in charge must leave the worksite due to illness or other emergency, shall inform the system operator and employees in the crew, and the new employee in charge shall be responsible for the clearance. 1926.961 C10 Releasing clearances. To release a clearance, the employee in charge shall 1926.961 C10 I through 1926.961 C10 4 notify each employee under that clearance of the pending release of the clearance. Ensure that all employees under that clearance are clear of the lines and equipment. Ensure that all protective grounds protecting employees under that clearance have been removed. And report this information to the system operator and then release the clearance. 1926.961 C11 Person releasing clearance. Only the employee in charge who requested the clearance may release the clearance, unless the employer transfers responsibility under paragraph C9 of this section. 1926.961 C12 Removal of tags. No one may remove tags without the release of the associated clearance as specified under paragraphs C10 and C11 of this section. 1926.961 C13 Re-energizing lines and equipment. The employer shall ensure that no one initiates action to re-energize the lines or equipment at a point of disconnection until all protective grounds have been removed. All crews working on the lines or equipment release their clearances. All employees are clear of the lines and equipment, and all protective tags are removed from that point of disconnection.